is this is the next part in the tutorial for making, or I suppose not really even the tutorial, just a guide to how I am, or demonstration, how I'm making a 10-ton open goods wagon, GWR open goods wagon, and it's the classification or diagram capital O2, and I'm just at the point of, let's have a look. This is the picture that I'm using, and just to remind you that this is the wagon altered for use by the military during the First World War. So it has these extra bits up here, planking added here, and some rings for tying the animals up, and this has been moved down. So really I'm using this simply as a guide for the main body of the wagon, but especially for the wheels and the framing and the brake gear. So looking right in, that's what we're going to be looking at. That's what I've been working on. So here we are. This is where I left it, and when I left it I was eliminating unnecessary polygons, and if we look in close here you'll see that I've eliminated the polygons on the inside. That's this inner face of this inner part of the wheel, but because it would be concealed by this, the flange, but the flange is not the same diameter, internal diameter, as the inner part of the wheel. You'll recall from the second part that I added this piece. Let's have a look at the picture. It's this piece in here. So what I have not done is allowed for that in the internal diameter of the flange. Now I've got a copy over here which hasn't been reduced to polygons. It's still the original standard primitives, so these are tubes. So, and it's actually a group at the moment, so we'll ungroup that. And if I'd already converted this to polygons, and we'll see here, luckily I haven't, unlike the internal part which is now just an editable poly, so I couldn't alter the radius of that internal piece now that I converted it. Similarly, the tyre, the main part of the wheel, has also been converted to an editable poly. Had I converted this as well, then what I would have done is just cloned this and copied it over so that I could alter its internal diameter, because the internal diameter of that inner bit, that inner tube, the inner tube, is 1 foot 2.75 inches, and this is 1.3. So what I want to do is alter this one to 1 foot 2.75. 2.75, there we go. And by doing that, first of all I've concealed the gap which I'd created by removing polygons from the inner facing faces of this sort of pucey coloured tube. And also it means that I can see here, look, that there are polygons overlaying polygons there. So actually for this one here I can save more polygons by just removing all of those. That's what I'm going to do now. And first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hide everything that isn't selected, so it just leaves me with the tube. Not sure if I can get in much closer. Yes, I can. Sometimes you can't get in much closer. And convert that to wireframe. And now I'm going to bite the bullet, convert this to an editable poly, which means I can't now alter the radius, the radii of the tube, external or internal radius. So polygons, so now let's just pick those up. Actually, before I do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight the polygon counter, get that up, and then go back. Polygons, there we are, the ones that I've picked up. And this is useful because this is a little check. On the one hand, it tells you how many you've saved, which is always nice to know. Everybody likes saving things, I'm sure. And on the other, because we know that this is an even number of segments making up the flange, and indeed the wheel as a whole, then as long as the starting number is a even number, just to double check there, see if any others, any errant ones. Sometimes I pick up these outer ones by mistake. And now if I delete them, or when I delete them rather, I'll check down here to see that it's an even number left, and it is 96. So there we are. I've saved what's that, 32 faces, which is of course one face for every segment of the wheel, which is good, because now my budget so far is my budget's 10,000, my current is just over 1,030. So let's now unhide all of those and let's actually see them. But looking at it, of course, that budget's including those over there, which amount to 768. So actually the ones I've used on the wheel are just 192 faces. Okay, now before I go any further, what I'm going to do is, you see there's that should disappear when I get the texture on it. That sort of, you get those sort of effects. Let's just have another look at my wheel. What I want to do is to have, I want to pick out that sort of edge there. So on I've made a texture. Let's bring it up. There we are. I've called it frames, and I'm thinking I'm going to try this on the edge of the wheel. So you see here, this is just my work in progress texture for this. Because I've got a number of textures within this. I've got some rivets going up and going along, and I've got there, which I tend to use for the springing of the springs, the leaf springs on the wagon chassis. Okay, so that's frames, TJ, and it's save as. It's in my Open Wagon 02 folder. I've put it there. Okay, and this is just Paint Shop Pro, which I've been using since 2000, 19 years, 7.4. Goodness me, and still fine for what I want to use. So let's add that texture in. Now up here we've got the textures, which are the plan. Let's get rid of the map. So let's add in let's make a new texture, and let's call it my old favourite frames, and let's make sure it's visible and diffuse colour, and there it is, frames, and there it is up here. Now I'm going to make a variant of that shortly, but at the moment I just want to leave it as it is. So because here on this edge I want a shiny, that's the tyre of the wheel, that's in touch with the rail, and even the lowliest wagon, the tyres tend to be a bit shiny, even if they're very infrequently used, because they are in contact with the rail. Right, so let's see what we can do here. Well, I'm going to have a go at this one, at the flange. I'm going to see if this will do the effect that I want it to. So first of all I'm going to hide all the unselected, and I'm going to apply frames to this, and then you get that sort of effect until you add in unwrap UVWs, and there it is. And it doesn't really mean anything at the moment. Excuse me. In fact, what you can see when you rotate it is that it's just pasted it on there any old how. So the way I want to do this is to edit that, and you can see where it's appearing. That's the image that it's using. And my first step then is to tidy up these faces here. So what I can do is go into wireframe to make sure I just pick up, now these are the faces that are going to, as it were, face outwards, and I tend to give them a fairly uniform texture. There we are. Okay, and we only want to see those. We'll eliminate that. Filter selected faces, in other words only the selected faces are going to be shown. and then I want to planar map it. What that does is it not only presents the faces correctly on the texture, it also, how can I describe it, it ends their influence over other faces when you start texturing those. In other words, these highlighted faces are now independent of the others as far as the texture is concerned. I can't think of any better way of describing that. I'm just shrinking that down, and I'm going to make it this bland colour here. Let's have a look. And there we are. It's pretty boring, pretty bland, but it doesn't matter because that's just the side of the flange. What I want to do now though is to try something. I've never done this before, but I thought I'd give it a go on this. So I'm going to try and put a texture on the edge. It makes a straight face look like it's curved. Now I'm no artist. I have no idea if this is going to work or not, but I thought I would try it. So I'm going to pick up these. So I've picked up some of those. I just want to planar them. Okay, and let's have a look at that. Right. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to shrink them down a bit. I'm looking here all the time at the effect that I'm having. That's the effect I'm looking for. Amazing. First time, I can't believe it. I think it's probably a bit extreme, but if you look at here, it looks flat, and there, I think it looks reasonably curved. I think that's still a bit too, I think that's a bit bright. So I'm going to alter my texture. I'm going to go into Paint Shop Pro, and this is it here that I'm using. So I'm going to highlight that bit of my texture, and in this one, it's a gradient fill, and that's the style. So I'm going to click in there. I'm going to edit the style. Bring that one back and bring that one back a bit. Let's see if that looks okay. Let's try that. That's increasing that too much. That's the problem, is that one there. So I'm going to undo. I'll keep the new selection. So it's this one which is the problem, which I think is there. Put it there. Let's try that. Ooh, no way. No, that's not right. Let's have a look. Okay. Still not enough. No, I'm not making a good job of that at all. I think what I need to do, just want to knock it back a bit. So I think what I'll do, where are we? Is I'm just going to pick up that gradient, and I'm actually going to make sure I get all of it. I'm just going to knock it back a little. Oh, irritating. You do this in any of your paint programs. This is not a tutorial for just the gamma. Take the gamma back a bit. Let's have a look at that. Yeah, I think that's okay. All I've done is just darkened it down a bit. Let's have a look. Excuse me. Of course. I'm not going to adjust the gamma, am I? Right, I'm making a pig's ear of this. So let's get those back. Let's go to, what's it I've got there? 128, 128, 128. As it's here. 128, 128, 128. And that jumps to 64, 32. So I'm going up in a linear. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop that back to 110 on the red, green, blue. slightly darker. And now let's try. I think I've still got too much there, so I've still got the style wrong. Bear with me on this. I'm just so I want to bring that to there. Okay, that's better. So as I say, if you don't know how I'm doing this, then it's essentially a question of learning whichever paint program you're using. I'm going to save that, and then I'm going to, where are we, frames. I'm going to reload that, and when I reload it we should see a difference there. There we are. Yeah, it's not too bad. Okay, yeah, I think I'm happy enough with that. So back to texturing. So let's pick up some more faces. You can see here they're building up. I've got to pick up all 32 because it's got to be uniform. Oops, picked up something else there. Being a bit quick with the mouse button. And here. I mean, anybody who's got a ha'porth of an artistic eye can do a much better job than I can, because I've got none. So it's just guess as far as my part is concerned. Smooth and highlights. Okay, so we've got some of it done and some of it not done. So here we go. Planar map. Now we've got it all done. It doesn't really matter that this gets stacked up, because I'm just using the same position. It's the vertical positions that are key. So I'm going to make this position vertical 1. That's the top of the texture, and this one I'm just going to bring down until it looks about right here. Coming in a bit too much. Bit less. I'm just trying to get the position there. Okay, let's have a look at that, see if this has been worth all the hassle. Not bad. Yeah, I think it's better. Is that right? That doesn't look right. Oh, maybe it does. It's just a perspective. Right, good. Okay, so now the back of the, you can see there that the texture is still unedited. It's just wherever it's been dumped. And also there's no inner faces to do because we deleted those. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click away and then pick these ones up. I'm not going to see it while we're doing it. Oops, that was the wrong thing to do. Doesn't matter. There we are, because I'm going to replanar that in a moment. Keep picking them up. You can see they're stacking on top of each other now. What you should get is a very nice circle of them, not this mess here. Once you planar, because it correctly positions them like that. Told ya. So now we'll take this right down, and I shall make that black. I tend to put stuff inside a bogey black. It's there, but I'm not too worried about showing any detail. So there we are. There's the flange of our wheel. So let's unhide. Okay, and let's have a quick look. Yeah, well, this face probably should be a bit brighter than it is, but I'm prepared to live with that at the moment. I can always go back and brighten that piece up if I want to. I'm not really inclined to. The tyre is going to be a completely different kettle of fish, and what I want to do with that is to I'm taking a clone, wrong way, where are we, taking a clone, there we are, and basically all I want there is this outer piece here. First I'm going to make it a different colour so I know what I'm doing. Well, I like to think I do. And quick way, I mean, you can go around that and delete all the faces individually if you want, but what I would prefer to do, what I like to do, is come into the vertices and just pick up vertices, and if you, I'm holding down the control button by the way when I'm doing this, if you pick up all the vertices, then they are the, let's jump back to here, they are all the points which are here to give you the internal face and the sides. So if I delete those, all I'm left with is a ring. There we are. And I'll come back to that. I just want to check this because I thought I'd deleted. Oh, I know, I've got to keep the in. I was concerned about I noticed here that I had the inside face, but of course I need that because this here has a slightly less wide than the actual rear tyre itself, the actual wheel itself. So let's get this one sorted out. Let's give it our frames, and let's just check we don't need nothing over there, nothing up my sleeve. Let's go to unwrap. Okay, now for the front part I want something a little lighter, I think. Yeah, it's going to be 2 tones of grey between the outer face of the wheel and the outer face of this inner part of the wheel. So there's no way I can avoid having to go around and pick up all the faces, so I'm just going to quickly do that. Hide the unselected. Edit. Let's go into perspective wireframe. And now just select these outer faces. Let's just see the ones that I've picked up. It's a good idea to keep a half an eye on that, glance across at the edit UVW's pop-up window there, because if you pick up one of these, for example, it should show differently. No, it doesn't. Oh. Sometimes it does. It all depends, I think, on the mesh itself and the way in which you're working on it. So there we are. So let's planar that, and we've got some variants here. I think what I want to do is to give that the same colour as the outward face, this tone of grey here, and then here I'm going to invert the selection, and that gives me all the inner ones. Let's planar those, and again, because I'm giving it a uniform colour texture, I don't mind that they're at different widths. If you're doing something like the tank of an oil tank load, or wagon, or tank wagon, the actual oil tank, then you'd have to make sure every face is the correct width. That is, every one of those little faces there is the equal width all the way along. When you pick them all up like this in a circle and planar them, you get this rather odd effect. I think we should be alright there though. That looks alright. So let's now unhide all. Beginning to get there. I've noticed a little, is that anything to worry about? No, I thought there was a little missing piece there. Okay. Now the wheel itself, and what I've got to do here though is I've got to remove the tyre, and the reason I'm doing that is because the tyre is going to have a different texture, and I like, rather than making multi-materials, I like to use separate materials and separate the meshes out. It's just my way of working. You don't have to work that way, but I find this the most logical and straightforward way of working. So wireframe again, and I'm going to take out the actual tyre, that is the face of the wheel that is in contact with the rail. And railway wheels had their tyres, steel tyres, as they do to this day, and the profiles of those tyres, indeed the profiles of the wheels as a whole, have to be watched very carefully, maintained, re-profiled, new tyres replacing old when necessary. There we are, and I'm just deleting those. Yes, thank you. And let's go back to notice, by the way, that I've got texture correction highlighted. Very, very important. It has a slight hit on the performance, but it's negligible really. Now obviously we can't see a tyre there. In fact, what I'll do to show you that there is going to be a tyre there, I'll take the tyre and I'm going to tell it to position it back where it was. I'm positioning on the XYZ of this mesh, and it's blue. So there we are. So let's take the tyre, apply the frames. There we go. Alright, UVWs, and what I should do really is, what I'm going to do is I want to differentiate it from this one. So if I look at that just to remind myself, it's this that I'm using, so I'm going to use this one. You'll see why I'm gibbering about that. So I'm going to take the whole of that. There it is. I'm not worried about planaring it at this stage. Take it right down, make it slightly darker, to give me a differentiation there. So I'm, as it were, making a nudge. Remember, this is lit by sunlight, this image, so it should be darker than that. So there we are. That's to differentiate it from the inner part of the wheel. The only other thing that I've got there is the face. So all the faces, all the polys of that part of the wheel are now coloured in that texture, part of the texture, and to emphasize the really beginning to think about changing that. I want to emphasize the fact that there is a small amount of inner part of the wheel showing there. It's only a very, very minor matter, but it can help with the look of the thing. So I might alter that. Let's have a look, see where we are with that. What if I move that over to there? Yeah, that's okay. I'm still getting that edge there. So that's all I've done. I've just altered that inner part of the wheel, and now if I take the outer part, what I'm going to have to do is individual faces. I thought I was going to be able to get away with it, but I'm not. So I'm going to pick up all of these. You get a feeling for these things. Missing one. There it is. Up there. Now, just remind yourself, losing track here. That I do there. So I'm taking this down in size, moving it to there, and then I'm going to invert the selection, so that means the inner bit there, and then planar it, take it down. If I was to leave it on this very light colour here, you'll see the effect. So I'm going to move it there. Just enough, I think, just to lift that there. I think we'll see it when we rotate the image. Yeah, maybe I'm being a bit prissy about it, but I think that's okay. Okay, so I'm going to come back to the tyre. Probably it'll be in the next tutorial. But what I want to do now is to get some spokes in the wheel. Okay, so these are quite, let's say complex, but not particularly complex shapes. Potentially they are, because often what you get at the end of this, you get a slight increase in diameter at the end of each one, and we can allow for that, but also they're curved, they're rather like the here, but that I think might be a bit too much. We'll try it though. I'll try it out. We'll try it out. I'll try it out. Talking about this. And how do I do a spoke? Well, a spoke's easy. Spoke's a box. Just have a quick look there. Okay, just to get an idea. I tend to draw these. Let's just select anything. Okay, and I tend to draw these just guessing. It's going to be 6 inches. Try that. 1.5 inches. Does that look about right? I think it does. 2 foot 5 and 5.3 at 7. Make it 2.6. And just to make doubly sure that it is centered on the wheel, let's have a look at it. So there we are, and it's too wide, I think. It's the same width as this inner part of the wheel, so it's the same width as our inner bit there, which is 5.75. So let's convert that down to, set that down to 5.75, quarter of an inch, but it makes all the difference. And let's just make sure we've got it positioned where we want it, because of course the center piece there, the center line is hopelessly out. Let's center it. Even that's not going to really help us a lot. Just take it back to, I suppose it could do, couldn't it? On there. Oops, no. No, that's the, why is it not centering on that? That's what it needs to center on in order to be correctly positioned in that part. Oh, there it is. Now it's correctly centered, and that's the position of our first spoke. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to, before I leave it as a box, but let's just increase, no, that's the wrong ones. 2, there we are, and it's 2 foot 6. So what I'm going to do is, first of all I'm going to colour it differently, and then I'm going to make a clone. Bring on the clones. Take it up. Okay. And I'm and take it down. I think I want about 3 inches. And I think that's about right. This might seem round the world for a shortcut, but I tend to do it like this. I think actually that 3 inches is probably too much. I think I want 2 inches. Let's make 2 inches there. And you'll see the method in my madness. These are just for position. Let's get in, make sure we know. Yeah, look. Right, to get those precisely positioned and make this one a little bit more accurate there. And then convert this to an editable poly. And it's the vertices I want to alter. So all I'm doing is I'm just going to bring those vertices in just a tad. Into that. Okay. So, where are we? There we are. And then I'm just going to stretch these on the y-axis, just going to open them up a bit. I'm looking down to the bottom right here. It was 129, he's in the middle there. Do the same here. Now, and delete my positioners, as it were, and let's have a look. Okay, and it doesn't look very good at the moment, but we're going to put some texture on it in a moment. Once we've done one, of course, it means we've done them all. I'm just eliminating the polygons which would be buried in the wheel, so I can save on polygons. Okay, and now let's have a look at our frames as far as the texture is concerned. So the first thing I'm going to do, get the edit window up, and I'm going to select those front faces, and let's just make sure that they're the only ones showing. Planar that, and I think let's just bring those down a bit. Rotate 90 degrees, and enlarge it a bit. What sort of effect do we get there? Not bad. It's probably a little bit suggesting a much stronger curve than there actually is, but if we look back, we're okay. I might still alter this. This might be a bit too... Right, now you see here we've got all sorts of fun games. So what I'm going to do is just go back to this, select those faces, select invert, get that, edit up, planar map, everything that I've got. You can see there's some all sorts of strange things there. Doesn't really matter, because I'm just going to dump it all into that texture. Maybe the only one that I might alter is on the back here. 1, 2, 3, edit, planar, take it down and move it up to the black. There we are. Let's have a look. Yeah, definitely think I'm going to knock that back a bit more. And also I'm going to move that in a bit because it looks like it's overlapping that inner part of the tyre there. Looks odd. So let's have a top-down view. And we've got it selected, so let's just collapse everything down. And it's these here. That's the outer ones here. Even though I'd set the width correctly, I now want to bring that in a little more. Just by eye. And you can immediately see that those edges there, those join in just that little bit better. And you've got that slight increase. Worth doing at the end of the spoke. Right, so let's centre that. So we're messing about with it. Let's clone it. And I think this is the correct way, yeah. Oh no, that's not it. It wants to be on the x-axis, I think, and we want to clone it holding down the shift key and take it 90 degrees. I'm not worried about the middle, that's where the axle is going to go. There we are, and so that's going to be hidden. And in fact it's going to be hidden by the axle box. Let's clone it again and take it 45 degrees. There we are. And let's clone it again and go 90 degrees. Doesn't really matter. Once you've got them done, they're done. But most important of all now, those ones, you see that bounding box, the white, that is correct because it's horizontal. All that bounding box is horizontal. Those need to be horizontal as well, and the way we do that is our good old friend reset X form, and there it is. It's now a square. Now although that's square, it's best to reset that as well. This one definitely. Okay, so that puts it into the correct orientation for Gmax and indeed the exporter to see where the spokes go. Now, I spent some time doing this because I wanted to make sure that the spokes looked okay. I'm still not 100% convinced. I think they're a bit wide. Let's have a look here. They certainly look a lot less wide. So what I'm going to do is go back to here and I'm going to delete what I've just done. So I'm just working with the one spoke. Here we are. And into the top-down view, and let's have a look at the vertices at the back, and I'm going to take those vertices in a fair bit. Let's have a look at that. And I think maybe I'm going to take the other vertices, those ones that I've brought in just for the improve the effect, just an arbitrary amount. I'm just doing it by eye. That to me looks a bit better as a spoke. In fact, it now looks bespoke. Ah. I don't care. Okay, so now what I want to do is to make sure that that is centered, because I've altered the dimensions, and now I'll just do the same as I did before, which is not to do that, is to make sure I've got the correct axis, and it's either of those. Here we are. And rotate 190 degrees, and rotate it another 45 degrees, and then, oops, and then rotate it back another 90 degrees. Okay, let's have a look. Yes, I'm happier with that. That looks better, I think. That looks alright. Good. Okay, so the next thing I need to do is to put some shine on the tyre, and in order to do this I need to go into I think carriages is probably where I've got that. There we are. I'm going to copy and then paste, and this is my reflection, and so I'm going to make a new material. Here it is, frames, and I want to make a copy of frames, but I'd like to call it shiny frames. And here's the reflection, and it needs a bitmap, and you use that, and you see I've got one there, and then you come into, you've got 100% to show the texture, but the reflection you can take it down. I think I normally take it down to about 50%. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 50%. Okay, we'll live with that. That's what it'll look like. Because although it is a wagon, and then, you know, wagon wheels get plenty of use, we don't want it too shiny. Now you'll see here that we've now got two maps. Those are the two maps that make up the texture. That's the shiny map, and that is the frames map. And what I'm going to do to give me, I'm just going to shiny up, as it were, polish up one of those colours. In fact, what I'm thinking of doing is using that little colour there. So I'm going to shrink this right the way down, even though it's the whole of the rim. I'm just using a few pixels to, I'm using 1 pixel. There we are. Now, although you don't see that in Gmax, when you export it into Trainz, you will get a shiny effect there. Now, I'm spending a lot of time on this wheel because I want to get it right, because once I've got this wheel made, and indeed the axle boxes and the chassis framing and all the rest of it, I'm going to use it on a whole series of wagons. So you do it, spend the time and do it once. I'm still not happy about this brightness here, so I'm going to go back into my paint program, and here I was at 110. I'm going to make this 100. It was 128, so now I'm going to take it back. There's the new colour. Okay, and I'm going to highlight that area. Predictably, I haven't picked it all up. Here we are, and I'm going to try the flood fill on that. Okay, let's save that, and then I'm just going to reload it. You'll see the effect as I reload it. Slightly knocked it back a bit, and of course it's knocked back that bit of that shiny tyre as well, because that's using one of the two. It's using frames plus the reflection. Not 100% convinced, so I think it's a lot better. The temptation is to keep fiddling around with these textures till you go mad, which I try not to do. Go mad, that is. I don't think I want to alter that anymore. I think I'm going to leave it now, and keep it at that. So that's my wheel. I've got it down to as few polys as I possibly can. If I just, let's hide that at the back there and this one here. If I just pick up the wheel, I've got 304 polys there. That's including the tyre. That's everything. Okay, compared to my undealt with 768. So I get 300. I get, so how many is it here? 304. So I get 2 wheels and a bit over for the sake of one of those primitives, standard primitives over there, collection of primitives over there. I'm just looking at it in every which way. When it comes, push comes to shove, it's not going to make a lot of difference. I think it's going to look okay. It's going to be quite a lot hidden there by the, let's have a look here, by all of this framing and the axle box, the springs, all that's got to come in. But I always like to start with the wheels. I think they're exceptionally important. First we'll get them right, make them look okay. Yeah, I think that's okay. There's enough of a variation there to give the effect. And I think there's enough there. That slight increase at the end I think is adequate. Not worried about that. It's going to get hidden. It's not actually using any more polys because that is all just part of, that's just, what is it, 1, 2, 3, 4 polys. I can't do it for less. I can't knock a hole in it and produce fewer polys. So there we are. That's the wheel. What I'll now do is I will group that. Okay, and save it. Should have done that a long time ago. And save it as my copy. And just going to look at it here. So we just look, that's our center line. So now what I want to do is just bring in a deselect that. And remember, I'm looking through, if I select the group, I'm looking through and I can see the yellow there. That's actually the my sort of safety bits and pieces, so I'll move those out of the way. This is my wheel, and I want a box, and I want it 4 foot 8.5, and I want it centered. Okay, and then I want to center it. That is my gauge, and so I'm going to move the wheel out. So this is really good. Get the wheel out to the correct gauge, which would actually be 2 foot 4 1/4. And then I'm going to clone the wheel and then rotate it on the vertical axis 180 degrees. Checking down here, always down bottom right. I'm going to ungroup it. I've got them all selected. I'm going to reset the lot to make sure they're correct, and I'm going to also make sure all of the pivots are correct, and then I shall regroup it, and then I shall move the whole thing into scale, into gauge, and our gauge, that's where our gauge is. So let's have a look at that. That's our first wheel set, pretty much finished. It's not how we're going to end up with the bogey. Will have to be, the center line of the bogey will have to be at the 0 height, and actually at 0 height and at the 0 XYZ, the middle of the axle between the two. If I want to put the axle in now, let's do that. not a big job at all. Fair sized tube. So let's do that. And so if that's not a tube, it's a cylinder. So let's just make ourselves this big cylinder. There we are. And don't need all those height segments. Don't need it chopped up like bits of a banana, segments of a banana, slices of a banana. 18, no, we don't need that. Most of it's all going to be coloured black because it's all going to be hidden. So 12 will do. Let's take the radius down. It's 1 foot 2.81 at the moment, so we'll take it down to, that's a foot. That's still far too big. 6-inch radius, foot diameter. 6 inches. Does that look about right? I think it does. And you can see here that it's quite short. So what I want it to do is just break through to about there, which I think 5 foot should probably do it, but we'll trim it up. I'll trim it up. We'll trim it up. 5 foot 3, 5 foot 4. Does that do the trick? Let's center it on our wheel. There we are. So it's breaking there. In other words, it's punching through these. That's what I mean by that. And is it punching through those? No, it's not. So let's just center it up. Got the pivot in the middle. Just eliminating that rather bizarre centerpiece, which is fine. When I come to put the axle boxes in, I will increase it. I might as well do that now. Let's have a look at our plan. Smooth and highlights, and our plan is to the front, so move that to front. There it is. So we can see how we're doing, which isn't too bad. And I think that's actually where the axle should come to, so let's go to 6 foot. It's rather too much on the one end, so we'll center it anyway and center that. No, we won't. We'll center the whole thing, not just the pivot. There we are. Ah, spot on. Look at that. That's going to be fine, I think. Might need a little bit of trimming, but I think that's fine. So let's go back to our axle. Let's convert it to an editable poly. So from 48 it goes down to 14. Nice. Let's colour it frames, and let's edit the frame, edit the distribution of the texture. There we are. I don't need to worry too much about planaring black. Doesn't matter about this showing. Maybe I could take it not so severe. There we are. That's a bit nicer, isn't it? Still quite strong there, but it's going to be hidden by the axle boxes. It's more the effect looking through the spokes at the axle that I want to achieve. It's pretty dark. Have a look what it would look like there. Let's dark it as black, that's a darker grey, that's a lighter one. Just the way I've arranged them. I suppose I could even go with that. Yeah, let's go with that after all. So there we are. So that concludes this video. That shows you how I've now got my wheel set for the wagon, and I'll just be cloning that up each time. So I've got 2 groups there now plus the axle. So if I pick those 2 groups up and the axle and I group them together, Okay, and then let's have a look at the plans here. I think it needs to be the right hand view. No, I know what it is. It's hidden. So that's my first one, and it's, we make sure that the group of groups, where that is, that's at 4 foot 1.649. So if I clone it and just put a minus sign in, press enter, that's my other, and I will be relying on modeling one and then cloning it over to the other side. I won't be worrying about the diagram here, apart from the brake equipment that's specific to it. Mainly because I tend to find that these plans, even though you try and be as precise as possible in entering the dimensions, getting the dimensions right, you do get sometimes positions slightly different on one side to the other. So make a decision, choose which side you're going to follow closest. So all of this, the W frame, the springing, the axle box, is all going to be done on this side, and then I'll just clone it over to this one, and I'll use that wheel set to act as the guide for that. When I finally get this for exporting it, will be split into two, with everything apart from this, a single wheel set, forming the actual model of the wagon, and the wheel set, only one wheel set, the other one will be deleted, will be positioned with the axle at XYZ000 here, and that will be exported as the bogie, and it will be animated, of course, but that's to come. So there we are. That's my next stage completed for this wagon general sort of GWR wagon for a 7 plank 4 foot 3 inch size, as it says here, and we've got all this texture to do as well. Yes, at some stage come back to that, but here I'm just concentrating on the frames. So there we are. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, me burbling on while I do this. Please note that although I've got these positioned here and I've got the gauge down here, this will change. Some of this will be deleted. Here I've still kept my original dimensions for the wheels in the original standard primitives, so that if necessary I can clone those up, and if I make a complete hash of something here. So there we are. Here I am saving as, and concluding this third part of building Wagon 02. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Please leave a comment if you wish, if you've got any queries or questions or whatever, and give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Give me a thumbs up if you haven't enjoyed it. And please subscribe to my channel to encourage me to make more rambling descriptions of how I make various models for Trainz using Gmax 3D modeling program.